Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us at Kaiser University Multidisciplinary Center for today's webinar, Financial Literacy Part 1, presented by Dr. Manuel Rosa.
All right, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Manny Rosa. You can just call me Manny. And I'm here to talk about, we actually have two workshops, Financial Literacy Part 1, and then we have Financial Literacy Part 2 coming up next week. So for this first session, um, we're going to define financial literacy, talk about understanding income versus expenses, and then some strategies to teach children how to save money. So we'll be doing this over the next 2 weeks. It'll be a combination of training the trainer, me educating you on financial literacy so that you're more well-informed, so that you can go ahead and train maybe anyone in your departments or your students, and just be well versed. So there's gonna be lots of statistics I'm gonna be sharing with you about financial literacy and why it's important. So that way, if you are convincing someone, let's say you have no financial literacy program at your school or in your district, or you're just trying to implement one, then you'll also have these figures to support and justify why you're interested and why more people should be involved and aware of financial literacy. So a little bit about me and my interest in this topic. Uh, since I was little, we growing up, we were a poor family, so being cost conscious was something that was just always in the back of my head. I could remember, and I don't even know why, I can remember as a youngster going to the grocery store and running to the sale section item to see what was on sale. And that was like my automatic instinct to go to at 5, 6, 7 years old, go to the sale section and see what was on sale. And to this day, when I'm at Publix, I still go, and when I walk in and I see the BOGO's buy one get one free, I'm still elated to see what's on sale and how I can maximize those opportunities. So I think that growing up in that fashion gave me a more appreciation and awareness of not wanting to be in that situation, and then doing everything I can to maximize that. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you is personal experience. Two of my biggest influencers, I don't have an MBA. I have a master's in education and a PhD in education. I'm an education professor. But if there was one thing I said I was good at that I can just rattle off statistics and do off the top of my head, it would be financial literacy. So my biggest influences have been Susie Orman. Used to watch her every week on Saturday night on CNBC. And then also Dave Ramsey. He has, I believe he has a podcast and he's on XM radio. So those two people, and they give contradictory information. So I do take the best. I believe I take the best of both strategies and then give it to one where we can all easily implement and follow. So what is financial literacy? It's a buzzword that has been more in the media and more as more studies are showing that students need this financial literacy, especially when you talk about generational gaps. This current generation, the millennials who are currently raising kids, not particularly known for being good at saving money. And there's talk that, there's an entire generation that's lost in the importance of financial literacy. So it's a big push to go into schools now and start at a young age and teach students about financial literacy. So officially, financial literacy is defined as the ability to use knowledge and skills to manage financial resources effectively for a lifetime of financial well-being. Also possessing the skills and knowledge on financial matters to confidently take effective action that best fulfills an individual's personal, family, and global community goals. So as I said previously, you may be applying some of the information for yourself, for your own personal well-being, as well as applying it, how you're going to be able to communicate this to students, this information. So why is it important? These next couple of slides are going to give you some statistics. 62% of US adults have carried credit card debt in the last 12 months. I have not carried credit card debt probably in the last 20 years, I think. More than 1 in 4, 27% admit they do not pay all of their bills on time. Nearly 6 in 10, 58% find it difficult to minimize their debt, primarily due to unexpected financial emergencies, 19%, or a reduction of income, 19%. 16% more US adults say their household carries credit card debt from month to month than last. So as you could probably notice, the pandemic has exacerbated this. And people, I believe, are now starting to realize their financial shape based on how the circumstances that the pandemic has dealt them. So for those that have had some savings and are still employed, the pandemic has been one story for them. And for those that had minimal savings but then lost their employment, and have been relying on savings and on all the government um, unemployment, has shaped their views. And I believe more people are now aware of their finances and what it means to be one emergency away from a crisis. The National Association of State Boards of Education Commission in 2009, they state that the earlier a student begins learning financial concepts, the more opportunities schools will have to impact behavior. So some strategies we're going to show today are for elementary school, middle school, high school, helping with transition for our students, and making them financially empowered. Uh, no surprise, students with disabilities may live in poverty and face barriers to obtaining stable employment. Government programs with confusing and conflicting eligibility may be a barrier to accessing services. I know my mother's on SSI, and there's only a certain amount of money she can have in an account at once. And there are all these rules that impact how much she gets, how much she pays rent, because she also lives in Section 8 housing. Um, so I know there are a lot of programs out there that may be confusing. And then employment, if you make a certain level of money, it may impact your eligibility for support services. So there are all these factors that we need to be cognizant of when talking about financial literacy. So there's also additional skills that are gained with helping with teaching financial literacy. So not only do you get those skills, but you also get goal setting as you help students walk through and make decisions with their money and what their bigger picture is. Buying choices, giving people those options. Do they need that name brand, or can they do something? Uh, can they have the same effect buying something that doesn't have that flashy designer on it? Philanthropic giving, we try and promote saving money, and then when Dave Ramsey says, once you have everything paid for and you have no credit card debt, to give like you've never given before, and that's the greatest reward to do with your money and the greatest feeling. So philanthropic giving, earning, how much you're earning, saving, spending, all these key foundations that will help our students in the long run be able to transition and be able to manage their own lives and make their own decisions. Increase self-esteem and self-efficiency. So if you're good at managing money, then all these can help you be additional skills that are gained. So why be financially stable? If you are doing this for yourself or doing this in the classroom, there are also other people that are involved in this. Your family members, anyone involved in your spending, is going to have an impact. So you also have to convince them. If you're making a commitment to be financially literate, and hopefully for your students are making that commitment, then they want to also get their families involved, and you may want to get parents involved so that everyone's on the same page. So if you don't want to live paycheck to paycheck, and the pandemic has made that awareness for a lot of people, if maybe you want to start a business someday, entrepreneurship, for this current generation of students is a big plus. To not to be their own boss and run their own business is very appealing to students. Want to be able to provide well for my current or future family, want to have financial security and not work my whole life. This generation of students that we're teaching definitely aren't stereotypically or generally speaking wanting to work uh, to their, they want to have a good balance of work and life and be able to enjoy life. Uh, want to be able to give and help others who truly need it more consistently. Despite the love for my parents, I want to manage money better than they did and have less money stress. That definitely was a motivation for me. And then want to be financially free enough to travel on a consistent basis. So with all of these, trying to get students to think about their bigger picture of what they want to do with their money. And if it's travel, then using that as the incentive or the motivation. If it's nice bags, whatever their motivation is, using that as a motivation to become financially stable. So there are some challenges, and that's why we have these webinars, to discuss the challenges and hopefully provide solutions to overcome these challenges. A study by the Association of Financial Counseling and Planning Education found that less than 20% of primary and secondary teachers believe they are adequately prepared to teach personal finance topics. This is why we're going deeper into this, not only providing strategies for students, but also for yourself so you can gain more confidence. Just you gaining more confidence alone is going to help be able to teach the students. Instructors' lack of knowledge about and training on teaching students with disabilities, including those with multiple disabilities, is an obvious challenge. Lack of research or studies on the long-term effectiveness of curricula for youth, including youth with disabilities. So while there not being research, we do know that providing students with choices and being able to empower them helps. Funding shortages. A lot of districts may not have the money to invest in financial literacy programs. And the inadequacy of efforts to provide information in ways beyond a curriculum or textbook. So the activities we're going to discuss does require some imagination, providing some real world scenarios, mimicking real world scenarios so that students can understand cost and benefit and income and expenses. So it does go beyond just having a textbook, reading a chapter, and then understanding the material. So what kind of spender are you? We're going to put this in the chat for you to do on your own time. When we practiced this about 30 minutes ago, that Mint website was not working. So this is just a couple of questions and it tells you what type of spender you are. So we'll post this in the chat for you to do later when the site is up and running about what kind of spender are you. So it's just a fun activity to do. And I encourage you to also use this when the site is running for your students as well and family members. All right, so what is a budget? So we're going to start out with the basics, defining some terms before we go into some actual strategies. So a budget is a plan that helps you manage your money by balancing your income with expenses. And those are the two key terms there: income, how much money is coming in, and expenses, how much money is going out. It is an itemized summary of probable income and expenses for a given period. And if you were suddenly hit with a $500 unexpected bill, would you be able to cover it? Nearly 6 in 10 Americans don't have enough savings to cover an unplanned event. And unfortunately, some people have been experiencing this, currently. I do a lot of work with the United Way, and they are also deal with a population they call the Alice population. And those are people that are one emergency away from being in poverty. So this is a particular set of individuals that we like to focus on and help to increase those savings. But ask yourself, if you were suddenly hit, would you be able to cover it? If not, then we have some tips for you this week and next week to help you to build up that emergency fund to at least 6 or 8 months. So some more statistics. For those of you who are trying to start a program, this will be important. You'll get the slides, but these are things you want to hone in on. In 2020, nearly half of U.S. adults, 47%, say they have a budget and keep close track on how much they spend on such things as food, housing, and entertainment. Over half of US adults, 52%, are spending the same as last year, while more than one quarter are now spending more, and fewer say they are spending less than before. Younger adults ages 18 to 35 are more likely than those ages 35 plus to be spending more this year. 41% ages 18 to 34 versus 25% ages 35 to 44, and 21% ages 45 to 54. 18% 55 to 66, and 19% age 65. So if you go through our webinar series that are posted on the disciplinary website, you will see we did a workshop on generational differences. So that speaks to that as well, how it's also attitude towards money is also a generational thing. Roughly the same proportion, 51% say they are saving the same as last year, while the proportion who said they are saving more, 32%, greatly exceeds those who are saving less. Obviously, all these statistics have been maybe offset because of the pandemic and based on whatever situation that you happen to be in. So those who are saving more probably are not as much so depending on their situation, whether you are now doing DoorDash or and paying those extra fees for DoorDash and Instacart and anything else you may be stocking up on, are greatly impacting your finances probably more than they did a year ago. Men, 80% are more likely than women to have non-retirement savings. Men are also more likely than women to have savings, investments, and among those who have any savings, men are more likely than women to save and invest their money in a 401k, IRA, or other investments. And then finally, the majority of US adults, 88%, are at least somewhat confident in their ability to meet future financial obligations, with nearly half saving they're extremely or very confident. Men are more likely than women to say they are very or extremely confident. So these are just some rough figures to give you some talking points about why it is important. So what does a budget look like? So you have fixed expenses and you have variable expenses. Fixed expenses cost the same amount each month. These bills cannot easily be changed and are usually paid on a regular basis, such as weekly, um, monthly, if you have association fees, quarterly, if that's how you divide your bills, maybe your car insurance you pay quarterly, or from year to year, all depending on how you set up your payments. So some examples of fixed expenses, and we're going to go over this in more detail. Your rent or your mortgage, car payments, insurance premiums, real estate taxes. While every year the cost can go up or down, most likely they're going up, but it's pretty much the same. And you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you have to pay those, you have to make those payments in order to keep your life functioning. So variable expenses represent those daily spending decisions like eating at restaurants back in the day, uh, buying clothes, drinking Starbucks, playing a round of golf, food, credit card, utilities, household maintenance, car maintenance. Those are all variable expenses. So you do have some control of how much you spend and put towards each, depending on after your fixed expenses, how much money is left over. And we're going to go very deep into these categories. So also when you're talking with students about income and fixed and variable expenses, you also want to explain to them in almost maybe at the same time, needs versus wants. And you maybe want to talk about needs versus wants before you talk about income versus expenses. So needs versus wants, need is what do you essentially need to live and to maintain your financial circumstances. So most of us, unless you live with your parents and they're not charging you rent, so for the kids, they will may not understand rent or mortgage, but they will understand the house that they live in, that has to be paid for. The utilities, when talking with students, just basically pointing out their laptops now that most of us are teaching in some type of hybrid or remote learning, their laptop has cost money, the electricity has cost them money, and the internet has cost money for them to be in school. So that may be examples you want to bring to them. Credit card payments, uh, charging is a want, not a need, but when you do charge and it's on your credit card payment, you need to pay them off. And then car payments is a need. Now, the type of car you get, whether it's a lease or a purchase, that will vary, but it may be a need. Obviously, if you live in a circumstance where you need to travel to work, and some of our students won't have car payments, they'll probably have a bus pass. So factoring in what that's going to look like for them, and having those conversations. Do they need a day bus pass, a week bus pass, a monthly bus pass? Well, what is more economical for them? So those are certain ways to talk with students, who may not be lucky enough to have their own car. Um, and when you're discussing transition. So what are some wants? Going out to a restaurant, or for now it's getting your DoorDash delivery or Instacart or Uber Eats, Grubhub, whatever you're using. Having expensive clothing, if name brand clothing could be one. Gym membership, which for some reason I am continuing to pay my gym membership, even though I have been out of the gym for a year now. So this is me preaching to myself, to cancel that membership, or hopefully be able to go soon. And then the iPhone 13, and I put that in there. There is no iPhone 13 yet, but students will want the latest iPhone. Students and all of us, human beings, want the latest technology out there. So having that conversation with the students, even if you have the iPhone 1 or the iPhone 3, as long as you're getting and receiving calls, that could be good enough. So having those conversations with students about needs versus wants, um, as often as you can, are a good start for them starting to think about financial literacy. All right, so if you were building, and I actually have this personally, if you were asking students to build a spreadsheet, or just having students understand what a spreadsheet looks like, what are all the different categories? There are two ways to do it. You can have them forecast, where they are predicting what they're going to spend each month, and look at that number, or as they're spending and as they're, um, every day, whatever they're spending on, they can write that down and then do it on a daily basis. So they can realize, because a lot of people, when they make budgets, they forget stuff. So I'm hoping that for all of you, these categories will be captured in your budget planning every month. So savings, ideally, if you're in a situation when you get your paycheck, you'll pay yourself first. And you teach students to pay themselves first by maybe putting $1, $2, whatever that amount is, away, for them to spend on something more long term. So savings is the first thing we should try and tell students to do, is to pay themselves first, to pay their future selves first, so they have that money. For those who, if they see the money, they spend it, they may want to open up an account or have an envelope system where they put money in the envelope or in the savings account, and then they put it away and never see it, never look at it, or have someone else, have a family member do that for them. But getting them to know that savings is important. Mortgage or rent. If you have homeowners, renters insurance, if you're lucky enough to own your own property, anything that's associated with that, you want to have that ready to go. If you pay your taxes, that's once a year. If you have your property taxes, and if you have your insurance, your homeowner's insurance, that may be once a year, but you want to save throughout the month, every month, so you have that at the end of the year. And for students, once again, they may be like, I don't pay rent, but just having them think about where they live, and someone does, and putting that on their list. Household, anything you need, from furniture, cleaning supplies to repairs, you want to have a line item for a household. And for students, that could be their school supplies as well. Utilities, electric, gas, oil, water, garbage, sewer, anything that requires a monthly payment. If you're creating a budget, you want to factor that in. I always say, for example, for your electric bill, if you have, if the electric bill varies, but I always budget For example, I budget $150. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But I budget $150 every month at the highest. I go for the highest rate so that I'm always prepared for that. Grocery, if you're serious about this, you can separate non-food items into other categories like personal care or household. So you can get even more specific with groceries, but just having a general grocery budget um, is helpful for students if they're going to pack their bags, if they bring a lunch to school, if they eat at the lunch school program, however they're getting their meals, they can conceptualize that. So meals out, everything from Starbucks to the ice cream man. My niece and nephews, since they were about in the fourth grade, their mother would bring them to Starbucks all the time and get coffees. And now that they're in high school and they're being have to make their own money and start paying for it, well, they have a very different understanding of going to Starbucks every day than when their mother brought them every day. So something to think about, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, anything you're spending, and just having that conversation out loud so students can understand that. Auto transit, so cars, expenses, gas, repairs, insurance, public transportation costs. Uh, Elder care, babysitters, daycare, summer camp, any costs associated with caring for elders, pets. Lots of our youth love pets, but not necessarily understand the cost associated with that. So having those conversations in real time. Education for those older students who are in college and maybe have student loan debt, or yourself. Office supplies, computer stuff, and postage. Students may now have printers if they're printing out work. Internet access, landline, mobile phone, any medical visits if they have copays, if they're going to the doctor frequently, any medication students may have to take, having them understand what the cost is. Personal care, toothpaste, you can lop that up into groceries, but you can also separate it out, especially if you're going to get a haircut. What that looks like, makeup, spa visits, clothes, self-explanatory. Toys, if students are into video games, what are the financial repercussions to that? We just bought my nephew a Xbox, $499, because he had one video game that he wanted to play. So, making particularly wise choices and having students understand the repercussions of that. Recreation, back in the day when we used to go to zoos and movies and all that, those subscriptions are important. Trips, if students, especially if you're using trips as an incentive for students to do well, or to perform, get good grades, having them see the bigger picture, and saving for trips could be an incentive for that, especially if it's a milestone like passing a grade, or a graduation, or transitioning into their first job or college. Those can be used as incentives. Gifts and donations, charity giving, we want to start that at an early age. Insurance, bank fees if you have credit cards, or if you only, your ATM, you only get a certain amount of withdrawals at a time. Taxes, we talked about that. Income, property, vehicle, any weird taxes I haven't thought of. And then other, you should try not to have anything in the other category. For example, I do a lot of Amazon purchases for myself and for my mother who lives in New Jersey. So I have an Amazon category. So I guess, and embarrassingly, I go over it all the time. I overspend that category all the time, unfortunately. But I convince myself I'm getting good deals. But Amazon, anything else you want to put a category for. So having a conversation with students about what else they spend their money on could help them identify what other categories they may need. So in the interest of time, we're not going to play this video right now. We may play it later, or we'll give it to you in the chat later on for you to show it on your own time. But it's just one strategy from a teacher, how to teach students visually how to do a budget. All right, so creating the environment. So if you don't have any financial literacy program at your school whatsoever, here are a few things that you would want to start out with. Number one, be cognizant of sensitivity issues related to money and finances. I remember being that student who didn't have money, who back then had food stamps, Uh, and I wasn't personally embarrassed, but my mother was embarrassed. But if people said, "Hey, let me see your money," or talking about money, um, be cognizant of what that means to certain people who have money and for those that don't. You want to make connections at an emotional level before teaching topics that may be overwhelming. When I list these 14 categories for someone that's poor, even though their expenses may be falling into the category, it could be overwhelming to know that all that is something that you have to pay for and be cognizant of. So, you want to connect with students at an emotional level. Work one-on-one when possible. So if you see students or overhear students talking about finances, having those conversations with them. Unleash creativity. You have students with a realm of capabilities in your classrooms, and having those that are visual, giving them more visual tools, those that are hands-on, providing that hands-on experience. So being very creative in how to teach these concepts for students with disabilities, and then reach students at their level as their needs grow and change. So your students, and at what level they're capable of understanding these concepts. So meeting them and challenging them to look at this, and getting them ready for what the real world is going to look like, will help that. So here are some, when we talk about asset development, and you have, once again, if you're trying to convince your employment to start a program, um, these, other people may not know them, or be cognizant of them. So just to go them real quickly, the myth that youth with disabilities are unable to work, the fact youth with disabilities can and do work, and their employment produces income, which is the first step towards saving and building assets. Youth with disabilities have their needs met by government programs. Youth with disabilities, fact is that they want to reduce their reliance and dependence on government programs. They need independence and want to become self-sufficient. And also a myth, youth with disabilities are not expected to save and build assets, but youth with disabilities, they want a better economic future. Increasingly, they are starting businesses and buying homes. I know I'm preaching to the choir when I'm saying this, but just in case there is some confusion out there or some hesitation when you bring up these ideas, about starting these programs, how to address them. So what are some things people can do to start building assets and start, understanding these concepts? So understanding the learning processes of youth with multiple disabilities, um, goes back to the previous point of meeting students where they are, and knowing, being creative. Teaching what is relevant, applicable, current, and age appropriate. Only you can know in your classrooms what that means. Being creative in a teaching approach. Thinking outside the box, not the book, the box. Um, Making connections with young people's needs. Using modules or lessons that are easy to read, easy to understand, and downloadable. Especially if you get packages that are out there that have worksheets that students can use, and students can use with their parents, and trying to get parents involved, that'll help. Giving equal importance to all lessons or modules. Include lessons on benefits planning where applicable, and providing instructors and trainers with cross disability and cultural competence training. So if you are starting from scratch, here are some tools and some tips for you, to help convince your administration that this is the way to go. Continue teaching money management skills within a program or setting that will make youth marketable to work in the financial sector. So especially those students in high school that are transitioning and may go straight into a work program, uh, teaching those skills, involving parents in financial literacy programs and services. If if it's being reinforced at home, that's going to be more beneficial. Including lessons or modules on the ramifications of poor financial decisions. A lot of times we don't like to talk about the negative, but if it can help to prevent someone from making a poor financial decision, then create an environment where it's comfortable to do so. Including the interactive games and approaches in a curriculum to teach money management skills. Educating students early about predatory lending and credit card debt. We're going to go into it more, um, in financial literacy part 2, but having those, there's a statistic, I believe, by the time students are in their first day of, I believe, college, they've already gotten like 8 credit card offers. So having those conversations about that, and including lessons on asset building early on. All right, so I'm going to go over some different activities that you can do in your classrooms to help students. Some of this is going to overlap, so you'll see the same suggestion twice, and that's because it just aligns and it covers all the different topics. So these are some activities that you can do with your students um, in your classrooms. So if you want to talk about cost versus benefits or need versus wants, um, discussing the difference between a job and a career would be an important step. Discussing the importance of staying in school. We have a webinar in our library of collections on dropouts and why students drop out. So if that's a topic of interest to you, you want to go back and take a look at that. Discussing different types of careers, different community workers, if possible, participating in a job shadowing opportunities, participating in various classroom, school, community jobs where they experience receipt of classroom paycheck for jobs completed. And you're going to see this idea overarching throughout, and that is creating your classroom environment, or if you have a school bookstore, or just creating the environment where people can actually practice and understanding these concepts and mimicking real life. Identify and model soft skills, something as simple as arriving on time for class, or when you're transitioning to a different assignment or different lesson, completing job duties, and that could be any classroom duties you assign, appropriate interpersonal and social skills. So if you see some behavior that you think could spill and be negative in the workforce, when the students transition to work, that's an opportunity to talk about that. And identify the education path needed to attain the job of their choice. So for those people who those students who have the want to live the life of celebrities, having them think about what they want to do, and if that profession is going to get them there. So for budgeting, here are some activities you can think about. Sorting words and pictures that represent wants versus needs. So even having, you can have students cut those out in magazines, or copy and paste stuff they find on the internet. Identifying a purchasing goal. So it could be something small that they want to purchase in the next month. You could focus on a holiday and what they may want to buy for the holiday. But once again, be sensitive to students, their financial situations. And it could be something as simple as something that costs $3, a new pencil. Um, Participate in a classroom savings plan to purchase from a classroom store. We talk about that. Identify a purchasing goal, saving accordingly from income earned from a classroom paycheck. So if you create the environment where there's purchasing and where there's savings, having that. Identify different types of income. So having students, especially students that are now Venmoing and Cash Apping, zelling each other money when they don't even have, and they never physically see the money, or it may be their parents' accounts. So having people think about, well, what does that mean to have all these different types, whether it's a check, a cash, a gift card, a paycheck. Sort pictures representing different types of incomes and expenses. Plan and budget for hosting a class party. Um, there are some students that are back to campus, so obviously meeting the safety protocols. It doesn't have to be a party per se, but maybe celebrating a milestone, um, passing an exam or something to that effect. Utilize an earned classroom paycheck to develop a budget and then pay bills, purchase needed supplies, and add money to savings account. That obviously is more complex, and maybe getting a couple of teachers to help at different grade levels and different stages to help to mimic that would be a good place to start. Identify preferred items from common sales flyers, sequence items by cost and how long it would take to save for the more expensive items. I do have a seventh grade math teacher who teaches students about stocks, and he has them pretend to buy stocks and track them over a couple of weeks and see if they go up or go down. Um, and of course, they buy Apple stock or Xbox or Microsoft. Um, some other activities for financial service providers. If you're trying to teach students about different service providers that are out there, sorting financial institutions from other businesses. What is a bank versus a store? So that they can get an understanding of where money is kept versus where money is spent. Believe it or not, there may be generations students in your class who have never been to a bank and don't even understand what that is. because their family members do online banking. So having that concept could be foreign and need to be. Invite a guest speaker from a bank to talk. Let the guest speaker know what level the students are at. Taking a trip to a local bank or a credit union. Identifying financial institutions in general. For those students more advanced, maybe in high school, while it's early on, maybe I'm talking about mortgage and what it means to take out a mortgage and what the interest rate means. And we're going to talk about the interest rates more at the next week's webinar. Uh, Matching types of financial institutions and types of services, mortgage, company to house, bank for a paycheck, etc. Setting up a classroom bank, we talked about that, even maybe pretending to have an ATM machine, identifying debit and credit cards, identifying the parts of a debit or credit card. Now they have chips, what that means. Compare and contrast debit cards to credit cards, uh, and then invite a guest speaker from a bank. So if you're talking about financial service providers. Also, if for parents that are out there, that may be listening in the webinar, if you have kids, if they can practice, studies show that if you can practice with real money, that's more beneficial than using monopoly money or something fixed. So if you have the means, maybe have lots of dollar bills or change, and you can start practicing with real money, that'll give your students more real world applications.
Oh, Dr. Rosa, we have a question.
Yeah.
What do you suggest for parents that do not have the knowledge of financial literacy but would like to have their children learn about financial literacy?
There are some resources I'm going to show at the end where I know teachers can download some of the workbooks and stuff that they have. And there also are some apps that will help that I'll recommend. Well, Mint was an app I was going to recommend, but now that it's down, maybe I should not. But no, just kidding. Mint is an excellent. So I'm going to be showing some specific resources uh, here and then in the financial literacy part too.
Excellent, thank you.
But the more confident the parent can be to learn, then it'll be easier to help the students as well. All right, so managing a bank account. Discuss the function of a checking account. Compare and contrast checking accounts versus savings accounts. Participate in the process of tracking spending. Discuss the consequence of overspending. Discuss the importance of checking account balances frequently. Determine if there are enough funds to purchase a given item. Discuss the process and timeline of writing a check and waiting for it to clear. Visit various banking websites. Identify cleared items on a sample bank statement, and identify pending items on an electronic bank account. Not to toot my own horn, but if parents also had this um, PowerPoint, then and they took a look at some of these concepts, it would help them in helping their student as well, helping their kid. If they just did all these things right here, help their kid to be more financial literate. So feel free to share the PowerPoint. They can endorse and deposit classroom checks into classroom bank accounts, participate in the process of writing a check, discuss the importance of saving money, label the different parts of a check. So I want to just do some self-disclosure here. So this is my generation speaking, because it may very well, so we're doing this to teach students the concept of money, but they may very well go through life without having to write a single check because they're doing a lot of electronic transfers from Cash App, Zelle, but we still want them to understand these fundamentals of how it works so they can get the concept of writing and giving the money away. When they write a check and give it to someone, they're giving their money away. They may not understand that if they're just on an app, put in someone's username and just hit click. So having them write the check, having that check come out a couple of days later, having them watch to see when it comes out, it is the greater lesson here with the money. If you think some of these strategies are antiquated, it's just having them visually concept. So as students more don't stray away from these, I predict we're going to have a bigger problem with students understanding the concept of money. All right, so back to label different parts of a check. Identify a check compared to cash, a deposit slip, or forms of payment. Using a token economy system to reinforce concepts of skills. So giving students things for doing chores or doing things around the classroom. Uh, Identifying interest and fees on a saving account and understand the impact of fees on various types of bank accounts. Some activities for saving and investing. You want to discuss either with your students or with your own child the importance of saving money. Reflect on how they reach their personal goal through a classroom savings plan. Incorporate unexpected expenditures into your classroom, job, payroll system. A broken window, and we know now with this pandemic all the unexpected things that are happening. Identify reasons to have a savings account. Your paycheck is short due to illness, you lose your job, um, or just saving in general for big ticket items. The importance of investing, and we're going to talk about that next week. Using play money, compute the interest earned from compound interest and simple interest. You will know what level your student is at. Comparing, contrasting different types of saving plans in terms of investing. Participate in the process of calculating compound interest, and then using play money, compute the interest earned from compound interest and simple interest to see the difference. So that's a lot there. That'd be for more advanced students, but at least introducing that conversation is going to help. Um, Going back to the question about parents, if you have XM satellite or you have podcasts, I do recommend Dave Ramsey. Uh, there are other people out there, but I do recommend him, and just hearing him. People call in and they share their scenarios and they ask him questions. So you'll start understanding more concepts by doing that, or reading his books. And of course, I love Susie Orman, so I have to do a plug for that. So six steps from the National Disabilities Institute, reinforcing the idea, if you're starting from scratch, or how to help students understand these concepts. So step one, create an understanding of why it is important for students with disabilities to understand financial literacy. Step two, determine your budget. So if you have the money to provide some books and resources for students, choose the right curriculum for your classroom, knowing that in that classroom, you're gonna have students at all different levels. So, having those opportunities available. Identifying community partners to assist. Maybe there's a credit union or some charitable organization like United Way that wants to teach students as part of their mission financial literacy. So getting some of those. Creating peer-to-peer learning opportunities. So pairing students up, and if students are buying something or searching for college applications or looking for something, having them talk about that opportunity, and then have fun and be creative. A lot of this may take some disclosure from yourself. If you're comfortable, whether as a parent or an administrator, if you're comfortable talking about out loud how you're going to buy something, or how you're spending your money, or what you're doing with your money, and the dilemmas that may face, the challenges that may face, um, that's going to help students also see, wow, this is the real world, or it's not just my family, or it's not just my parents who are doing this. Or so here are some resources. There's an organization called Jumpstart, and they have programs and curriculums from pre-kindergarten through college. So you want to click on that. And then there's the FDIC's Money Smart for Young Adult curriculum. This is a free curriculum that has been used by teachers across the country, consisting of 8 modules that include an instructor guide, participant guide, and PowerPoint presentation. And then those of you who are familiar with CPOMs, there are excellent resources, student educational resources for learning. If you click on that in their search engine, you will see a whole bunch of information that is ready for students to help students create lesson plans. And then if you're a parent, you can also take some of this curriculum to help yourself and to help build your financial literacy knowledge. So here are my final tips. If you're starting from scratch, proposing this literacy program to your higher ups, or to your districts, or to your partner organizations, financial literacy is an effective means of promoting self-sufficiency and increasing opportunities for all youth. Teaching and learning should be engaging, hands-on and implemented on a case-by-case basis, have specific objectives, um, starting out simple, needs and wants, budget versus expenses, and then getting more complex. Addressing topics such as balancing checkbooks, the tax system, asset building, predatory lending, counseling, and benefits planning. As you can see from that, one size does not fit all. So you'll have to determine what is best to start with and then to build upon. Design a curriculum that youth can relate to. So as of this moment, going to the movies is not an option for now, hopefully very soon. So having some curriculum, what are they into? All video games and virtual reality, artificial intelligence, whatever it is. Um, Design a curriculum that is culturally sensitive and reaches a diverse population. I can attest to being that kid that came from poor means, and teachers having conversations about owning things and having cars that we didn't have, and so just being very sensitive to everyone in the classroom who may not have the means or may have the means. Follow consistent standards in developing the curriculum as you would for any curriculum. Include lessons on benefits planning, especially for those students that are on SSI or their families are on SSI or other types of government programs. What are the limitations to that, and pointing students and families in the right direction of understanding what those means, because the laws are changing. There is some more flexibility with some of these programs, especially during COVID. So having those conversations. So in conclusion, financial literacy is a complex behavior that is the cornerstone of independent living. Should be addressed early. Something as simple as number recognition, counting, identification of denominations of coins and bills, basic arithmetic skills. Adaptive skills must be taught to compensate for areas of disability. So students may not be able to calculate on their own, and you don't think that'll be feasible. Then teaching them how to use a calculator may be what is the most beneficial. So having that conversation and having that capability. Using failures to follow budget as teachable moments. Talking about for students that are transitioning, what's the difference between salary versus hourly? What does it mean to have benefits? If students' desires are to work in retail, what does that mean? What is operating a cash register and having them practice that? Uh, Living alone versus a roommate. Students may have the desire to, when they leave high school and transition, to right away move out if they have the skills to do so. And then what does that mean to live alone, have a roommate? Restaurant skills. So when people do go to restaurants, how is it? Do they calculate tax? How do you calculate tip? Of course, there are apps for that. Any cost associated with travel. Having that conversation about saving and what that looks like. Do students need a car, or can they get around with a monthly pass? Is it cheaper to have a yearly pass or pay as you go, depending on how many trips they're taking on the public transportation? So having those, and then using the envelope system. That video that I was going to show talks about the envelope system. So we'll put that in the chat for you to watch at your own time. And that's just having a series of envelopes where you put money in and you label the envelopes based on categories. So you put $5 for paying yourself, then you put $5 for charity, $5 towards your electric bill, $5 towards whatever, and you use cash in envelopes for your kids to do that. And that is what I have for today for part one. Part two, we're going to go more into this. We're going to have more tips on, we're going to talk about credit scores, credit, financing. We're going to get a little bit more deeper for those students, more advanced students, dive deeper into financial literacy, and hopefully yourself learn some more. So we have about 3 minutes left. Dr. Miller, let me know any questions or any summary or what we can do.